Alright everybody, it's time for a new snake herder video, and as promised we're going to do green tree pythons. And I think this will be part one. I think I'm going to have to do a two-parter, but I thought I would start by introducing everybody to my favorite green tree python I own. This one's a little over a year old, and it is an Aru-outcross. Its mother was a beautiful blue, hormonal blue anyway, Aru. And the dad is an unknown locality lime green, and I got this guy from Garrick DeMeyer of Royal Constrictor Designs. Awesome breeder, awesome guy. I'm sure many of you watch his videos on YouTube, and I happen to live close enough to go and see him in person and pick all my animals that I have bought from him and out. And but anyway, this is my favorite green tree python I own because she's an absolute lamb. She has never shown any aggression at all. I free handle her regularly, and I tried to get her off her perch right away when I started getting everything ready to do a video, and doesn't seem to want to come off the perch yet. But now that I got the perch out of the cage, I thought maybe I'll get her to come off of there, or him or her. It's unsexed as of right now. The little nickname I gave it is Clay Matthews, because she's green and gold, and she came from a number 5 male crossed with a number 2 female of his. So that makes a 5 and a 2, which that's Clay's number. So hopefully it's a boy, just based on the name, and if not, well, who really cares? Snakes don't care what their names are. But awesome little green tree python. Let's see if maybe come off the perch here. I'm gonna step into the frame and we'll see how he does. Alright, you can see now that I'm in the picture how little he is as of right now still. But this snake is very calm, very docile. Nothing like my other two green tree pythons. I'm just getting started with the green trees. I'm hoping maybe I'll raise a little capital with my ball pythons this year to reinvest in my green tree python collection. I've only got 3 right now. I've got 2 Biak types. One that was a yellow neonate, one that was red. This guy was yellow as a baby. All of the babies from this clutch were yellow. But this one's my favorite strictly because just the calm demeanor. I mean, how can you not love a green tree python that you can actually handle? Here he comes. But my other 2 do not want a thing to do with me, just like most Biaks. It's definitely not all Biaks are like that. People who really like theirs rarely like it when you make that generalization that all Biaks are aggressive. I'm sure it's not the case, but my 2 certainly are. But look at this little guy. I mean, I'm sure most people who own green tree pythons, this is what they're hoping to get when they buy one. There's days when I'm about ready to just sell off all my ball pythons and start buying green trees because they're just gorgeous. I mean, how can you not like a snake that's just bright green like this? Very few of them are. I shouldn't say that. I don't want to make people mad who work with green trees and have got nothing but good to say about every one of them, but from what I hear and my personal experience, not many of them are this easy to handle, and even you can see how sketchy she, whatever it is. They're very, not very much at ease in general in people's hands. I always kind of liken them to Harley Davidsons. There's a certain mystique about them that makes up for everything else that's wrong with them. If you can tell from the tattoo on my wrist, I'm a big-time Harley enthusiast. I don't have one anymore, but I've had a few. And I know that they're not the best motorcycle on the road, but they're my favorite. You can kind of say the same thing about these. They're not the best pet snake in the world, but they're definitely a favorite amongst people who work with them. If you're willing to put in the time and the energy and the effort, they're just a treat. There's just something about them. You can't put a finger on it. And I remember when I got my first one, which is my biggest Biak, which I believe is a female. The guy who I bought her from sexed her at about a year old and said he's pretty sure she's a female, but with green trees you have to be really careful about sexing them, and couldn't be 1000% sure on it, but it's my biggest one. I'm going to do a part 2 to this video. I'm making it a two-parter, and I thought I would make part one with the one that I can handle. And but that snake, you know, I can touch her in her cage. I can put my hand in there and kind of pet her and stuff, and she hisses at me a little. She doesn't tend to bite, but she clearly is happier if I'm not messing with her. My other one is kind of the same way, and you just gotta, you know, let them do their own thing. You can't force it. You know, some of them are just never going to be handleable. Some of them are like this, and as long as you treat them gently and you have to let them do what they want to do, they're just really cool to work with. And I'm hoping, I mean, like I said, there's days when I'm ready to sell every ball python I have and just invest in green trees, because even a cheap green tree is worth about $300, and they have bigger clutches than ball pythons. So you can realistically make the same money with a handful of green trees that you can make with a ton of ball pythons. But they, you know, they're harder to breed. They're less reliable when it comes to breeding, and plenty of them are just never going to calm down and never going to let you handle them. So I just thought I'd give everybody a chance to meet my favorite green tree python, Clay Matthews. And like I said, I try not to handle her for him or her. I just have a tendency to call green tree pythons hers for whatever reason, but I try not to handle them for too awful long at a time. My part 2 video, you won't have to look at my mug. I'm just going to do some video of my other 2 snakes and the cages, the way that I set them up. This one's still living in a Rubbermaid tote, so not too long till this one will move into a bigger cage, but they do really good in tubs. They're very secretive. I remember when I got my first one, just telling my wife how funny it was that something that doesn't move a muscle almost all day long can really just captivate you. And then when you check in on them at night time and you come in with a red light, and you know, I come in with my little, as I call it, my geek light, which is my little red headlamp, and the way they stalk around their cage and watching them eat, everything about them, they're just a fascinating animal. So here's my green tree python, my favorite one. Hope you guys like her, him, whatever it is. Pretty much just almost entirely changed green at this point. There's starting to get the little white dots around the back that are really common in Arus. I'm hoping that maybe if I'm lucky it will be a girl and it'll turn into a nice blue one during the breeding season. And I would really like to eventually, although I'm just, you know, terrified of spending that kind of money on a species that I haven't reproduced successfully yet, but I'd really like to start a designer blue project. The blue green tree pythons are just some of the coolest thing ever, but it's just not like ball pythons where you can predict 1 in 4 are going to be this color or that color or anything. They just, their genetics are much more complicated, and even the experts don't necessarily have it nailed down. So anyway, gonna stop pushing my luck with this little guy, because he's very, you know, you see how quick they move, and if they're not gripped onto you, they're nervous. So there you go, my green tree python, part 1.